Cops of Reddit, what's the most BS sounding excuse you got that actually turned out to be true? My dad is an officer and he pulled someone over for speeding and running a red light, and they said their breast implant burst. He called EMS to rush them to the hospital, and it turned out it did, and it's actually very dangerous if they leak. Not a cop. Family friend was. Pulled a guy over who was speeding profusely. Guy was obviously disheveled. He said he was headed to the hospital because he had a tick on his penis. Cop was confused, but he escorted him there, then waited in the lobby to check on him/see if he was blowing smoke. After a while, he asked the desk what was going on, why it took so long to take a tick off his penis. Her reply: "It wasn't on it. It was in it." Former cop here. I was behind a vehicle that couldn't stay in the lane, kept swerving, etc. It was 1 AM, and I think another drunk idiot is on the road. Pull him over. Guy is a straight up a-hole to me. Curse me out, yelling at me, and I notice his speech is slurred. I get him out to car, and I can smell a fruity smell on his breath, and he has to lean against the car for support. I ask him how much he had to drink, and he tells me to F off. By this point I'm ready to bring him in for a DUI, but I just had a feeling something wasn't right. I called the EMS to come check him. Blood sugar was at 40. Not drunk, just a diabetic. If I would have arrested him, he probably would have died before I finished the paperwork. Go with your gut if something doesn't seem right. I'm running booking one night. Guy gets brought in for possessing a truly stupendous amount of drugs. I'm talking like 2 Rubbermaid totes full of shrooms, a huge bag of weed, and enough heroin to overdose half the county. Well, says he, I'm a DEA informant, and they told me to make the drop so they could be there and raid the crap out of everybody and let me go for helping. Aha. Right. Face left please. Guy is like, I'm telling you dude, they're gonna be super pissed that you country artards messed up their bust. Whatever, get in the holding cell and shut up. About 3 hours later 3 guys show up. DEA agents. They're super pissed that our deputies messed up their bust. I go back to the holding cell to let the guy out, and he's just like, they're super pissed huh? Yeah. Told you so. My dad was a cop and my favorite story of his goes like this. He's a young cop in a rough neighborhood. It's so late that the stoplights are flashing red, meaning treat it like a stop sign. Out of nowhere this pink caddy goes rolling through the intersection. My dad pulls him over. A big black dude was driving. The caddy had fur interior, dice in the mirror. A real pimp car, if you know what I mean. My dad goes, "Sir, do you know you ran that light back there?" And this guy says, "Officer, I do believe I got between the flashes." My dad was laughing so hard he had to let the guy go. Mid-July in like 2008. Young kid going 93 in a 55. I swing and he immediately pulls over. Approaching the car, his first words, before I can even start speaking, "My dog died, he hung himself. I gotta get back before my mom gets home." What point JPG? Anyway, he calls other family members. His aunt, uncle and 2 cousins come out to the stop, and between all their sobbing, they verify that the dog had actually hopped over the fence on a leash/runner and couldn't get back over. Everyone's crying now. They showed me a photo on their phone. Apparently they found the dog and called the kid at work and he just left. I didn't even bother verifying further than that. Cousin drove the kid's car back so they could take care of the dog and prepare for mom. Some said that I should have wrote him, but losing an animal sucks enough. He knew he messed up, and adding financial burden to him wasn't going to help him or me. Not a cop, but I had a run-in with one that was really funny once. When I was 18, I was on a double date with a friend, and we stepped out of a restaurant to smoke. A cop came up and started harassing us, telling us there had been break-ins into cars in the area. Eventually, he said he needed to pat us down, and he pulled a brown paper bag out of my friend's pocket. He got a smug look on his face and asked, "So, what's in here, huh?" My friend said, "The Emancipation Proclamation," with a completely straight face. The cop opened the bag, pulled out a small booklet, got embarrassed, and let us go. My friend had been to the Lincoln Museum earlier that day and did actually have a small copy of the Emancipation Proclamation in his pocket. I went to a disturbance at a backyard barbecue once. Turns out it was a bunch of Roma gypsies. As I was trying to figure out what was going on, I had some old lady approach me and want to talk to me off to the side. She told me she was an informant for the FBI and that if I left, she would be able to get some information on a matter the FBI was interested in. I rolled my eyes and thanked her and said I would be out of there as soon as I could make sure there was no violence going on. Anyway, I determined it was just verbal, so I cleared the call and went back in service. About 15 to 30 minutes later, dispatch radioed me to head back to the station. I got there and got a message to call some FBI field office and ask for a certain agent. I called and sure as shit this agent said he understood I spoke with his informant and wanted to know everything she told me. Blew my mind. I was driving with my fiancée and we went through a roadblock where they checked registration and stuff, and we get to the cops and they ask for our registration. I'm sitting in the passenger seat, so I open up the glove box and right there is a clear, unmarked baggie filled to the brim with catnip. I completely forgot it was there and just froze. Wide-eyed, I turned to look at the cop shining his light through my open window and he's frozen too, just staring at the baggie with this look on his face like, really? I just started immediately professing, OMG, I swear to God this is catnip, you can take it and smell it or test it or whatever, like I swear. And at this point it's just so ridiculous that I start cracking up and the cop takes it and reasonably deduces I'm telling the truth, and he starts laughing and calls his partner over and tells her what happened, and they both just cackled away for a minute and sent us on our way. My first ever real call was for a flasher at the local park. When I got there and finally found him, it was a mentally impaired young man 16 to 17 who had a pair of headphones on and a full Pooh Bear. I said, hey man, come here, what the hell is going on? You know you have to keep your pants on, especially at the park. He goes on to tell me he had bad itching down his pants and couldn't take it anymore, so he had to rip his pants off and was running home to get help. I said, come on, you couldn't make it home first. He said no, I had ants in my pants. As sure as heck, according to more than one witness's account, he had been sitting in a sandbox playing at the park and accidentally sat on a nest of red ants that had crawled up his pant legs. Cop here got a call of a domestic dispute that sounded very heated and a lot of banging was heard. Get to scene and I can hear someone yelling and swearing and brawling. Doesn't sound good at all. Guy answers the door, shirt off and angry, but seems bewildered as to why police had been called. He told me he was building IKEA furniture. Sounds like the most BS thing. But we enter, see the new IKEA furniture half set up and no one else is home. Color me surprised. This will probably get buried, but here's my best story. I had a heroin addict who I arrested for a warrant. While searching her purse, I found a small container with a grayish/brown substance in it, consistent with heroin. When I asked her what it was, she started laughing. She told me to test it because it wasn't heroin. I tested it and sure enough, the test came back negative. She explained to me that inside the container was the ashes of her dead cat. She said that when she goes to pick up heroin for her friends, she'll take some for herself and cut the rest with her cat's ashes. Her friends have been snorting or shooting up some of her dead cat. I used to work as a military police officer. I was working at the main gate one night and this guy tried to come on base, but he didn't have any ID other than a driver's license, so I couldn't let him on. The guy told me that a general said he could come on, but he didn't have any proof of that, and he didn't know what the general's name was. It was also super late at night and he didn't seem to have any answers that would help us identify who he was. Long story short, the dude ended up being legit and was coming on base to be awarded a Silver Star the next day from that general. This was my favorite story from my 4th grade teacher, not a cop. She went to a cousin's wedding in mid-July. The cousin had overestimated how much champagne they would need at the reception and was giving away bottles to anyone who was interested. So my teacher took 3 and put them in the backseat of her car. Again, this was a hot summer day in July. After saying their goodbyes, my teacher, her husband, and her parents piled into the car and pulled out onto the highway, where 2 bottles burst open, spraying champagne everywhere and causing quite a ruckus. Of course, while this was happening, the car was swerving as the driver was also getting bathed in sparkling champagne. So it came as no surprise that, as soon as they collected themselves, they saw the familiar flashing lights of a state trooper and pulled over. According to my teacher, the first thing the cop said was, "I'm not gonna ask if you've been drinking, because I can smell it from here." My teacher tried explaining what had happened, but the cop wouldn't hear of it and ordered everyone out of the car. That's when the cop saw that everyone, both drivers and passengers, were dressed in their finery, but soaked with champagne and looking quite shaken. A cursory search showed the open bottles, but the cop still insisted on a quick sobriety check just to make sure. That's it for today. Do all the YouTube stuff and take care of each other in the comments.